we have uh, Andrew, who will be speaking about an argument against stringent adherence to programming patterns. Now, I'm
Nice.
not particularly someone who's well versed in programming, despite doing a computer science degree. So I think we'll be treating this as a bit of an education for myself. But feel free to take it away.
This will be more tearing down the things you were taught in your computer science degree.
That sounds good to
um,
me. Fire away.
yeah. So I've been a software engineer for around 10 years now. Sorry, this is just going to be a rant, so you're going to get my face. Um, and one thing, and feel free to call me out in Discord if you disagree. But one thing that I've found with a lot of engineers, especially those that love to use three-letter acronyms, is they'll go off and they'll find some blog post or other and they'll start coming to talk to you about how you're doing everything wrong and we need to be very dogmatic about how we approach yada, yada, yada. Now, what I would say about this is I think programming patterns are great as a learning tool. They're a great idea and a way to express how we want to structure our projects. When I'm talking about this, I'm talking about things like CQRS. Here I go with this is what I'm talking about with your acronyms. No one knows what I'm talking about, but basically it means that data in is one class, data out is another class. Um, and people will say that this is a very good way to keep your reads and your writes completely separate. And the reason I have a problem with things like this is there's always an exception to the rule. You also think like you're never going to find a particular architecture style that will suit every single situation. And I bring this up, I've been working a lot with microservices lately, just small services that do one or two things. And I had to refactor someone's code the other day because they'd been adhering to this idea that that your helper functions need to be in a separate project because they're somehow an API that is used by your core logic. That's crazy. It was 50 lines of helper functions and they put them in an entirely different C# project. It blows my mind. Uh, and so what you find with this is you see just like so much code base bloat. You end up with like 400 lines of code that could have been 50 lines of code if you just moved that class into a folder on its own somewhere else, which is what I did. Um, and then not only on top of that, you're making things so much more difficult for people to navigate for other people on your team who didn't happen to want to read that blog post that you sent at the all hands the other day. Because quite frankly, not every blog post is all that well written or interesting. Half of them start with someone's life story. That's like, we don't need to go there. Um, and so I would say this with programming patterns. I think it is important to understand a lot of them so you understand where other people are coming from. But there's this great idea in music. It's understand the rules so that you know how to break them. Because more often than not, it's the nuance that's going to give you really good code. And like massaging the rules such that, like, hey, you don't always have to, obfuscate random code so that your business logic is 3 lines or whatever the hell. Like, just write it all in the same class. It'll be fine as long, within reason. um, Another one that I see with this is like interfaces. People who have a class that implements 16 interfaces or whatever the hell, just make it its own class. Just, I don't know what you're doing, why it has to be that way, but it seems like you've overthought about things, especially when interfaces only implement one method. It's silly. Get rid of it. Inheritance, it just hides stuff. Get rid of it. Anyway, that's the bulk of my rant. Is be free to break a few rules and don't talk in 3-letter acronyms that are just going to confuse your co-workers when realistically you don't need to. Thanks, Jared. That's my rant over. I'm sorry.
I really appreciate the rant, because as a producer, there are sometimes times where I've just got no idea what people are talking about, and I have to put on this face that looks like I'm saying, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
And it looks like, according to the chat, that most people agree with you anyway. So I don't think you've
Nice.
I think you got a lot of allies on your side when it comes to your perspective on life, the universe, and everything.
Good.